La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Benvenuti, welcome to La Lanterna podcast. This is Fabrizio and my best buddy.
Ciao, Fabry. It's Matt. How are you?
I'm very good. Very, very good, actually, because we just came through an amazing match.
Yes.
Where to start?
Well, the boys, I think, really dug their heels in with this one. I know we were talking about what our hopes were and what we were thinking we were going to get leading into the match. And, of course, hardly a minute in, we concede a goal. We'll talk about that more maybe in a little bit. But I think in the whole, you have to look at the performances, really a very well done one by the side overall. I think there were some maybe encouraging signs from Jed Spence. We didn't really know what we were going to see there. We had a lot, and you'll know maybe better than me, Fabry, but I think we were missing a lot of players in the match day squad. And Salernitana, even though where their position is in the table, they're not a team that they take lightly because we know how they've done in past seasons. We know about some of the players that they have. And I think well done to Gila and the boys again. This was a really important 3 points, I think, for us.
Let me start by saying what happened. The day before the match, Gilardino just let it out. He just let it all out. So essentially...
Yes, yeah, he did.
He sort of, I'm going to stay a bit light on the words because I don't want anyone to interpret my words in a different way. But essentially, he pointed the finger at the club to say, wake up, essentially. That's like in a very, very, very extremely short.
By the club, you're talking about like the club directors, not the players.
Okay, sorry. Let me re-say that again. So talking about the transfer market, he kind of pointed the fingers to the sports director and whatnot to say, hurry up. Hurry up in a sense of, you got already rid of a couple players, including Dragusin, but there is no replacement yet. Sure, there is Spence that came in, which was not a planned, quote unquote, planned player, but it definitely then we'll talk about him for the match with Salernitana, but he was essentially not in the plan. So it's an extra player, which helps, I would suppose, with the departure of Hefty, being that he's on the right, more of a right back.
Yep.
Or left back, because we saw him work on that side as well. And apparently he did in the past also play on the left. So he can work on both sides. But then when it comes to other purchases, nothing really came in. Right. So that's why he blasted at that one. And the other factor was I think he went a little bit too heavy there. I mean, mind you, we're not there. I don't know the details and whatnot, but he said that the conditions of the training grounds are horrendous, that as soon as it rains, essentially it's like a swimming pool. If it gets a little bit on the cool side, it becomes a skating rink. And essentially he quoted the 3 to 5 players from our almost starting 11 that were all out on injury based on issues that coming from the training field. So those are the likes of Haps, Sabelli, and so on. So that's a little bit Ekuban and so on, and that hurt. No, Ekuban came back. Sorry, but he did get injured in the past anyway. Yes. So what he's trying to say was, I can't continue every week trying to go on certain type of training factors and so on, and having to be careful because then I get them all injured because of that. Was it a bit too heavy in your opinion?
I mean, it was, I would say, some ways shocking. I was surprised to hear him say it because you don't always hear a manager say it. I don't mean shocking necessarily in terms of the content, because I think he's right about this, Fabry. I mean, look, we had a lot more departures leave. Obviously, that's math. We've seen the likes of Kutlu come in and come out. We've seen Jagiello. He's gone. He's not even in the squad. Obviously, we know about Dragushin, who's the most probably noteworthy loss at the moment. I'm talking about a player like Puskás. Like, some of these guys are guys that haven't featured for us. Some of these guys are guys we've kind of wanted to maybe move on. But at the same time, we're still down in terms of our squad. We still have a major fight to go in Serie A. And to have kind of like a last-minute addition player, and then we signed, I think, just before this match, another player from Salernitana who's also not featured and wasn't match fit anyway, so we couldn't see what he was all about quite yet. But you put those things together, and then also you're already dealing with that bullshit. Then you're getting ready for the match, and you have a bunch of senior players who are expected to be in the first 11 who are not because of some craziness is happening on the training ground. And it's not someone, I presume, I'm taking Gilardino's word for it here, but it's not some reckless tackle or something, or some player forgot to stretch. We're in tough conditions that make it harder on our players. And all of a sudden now we're without several players ahead of a key match. I mean, we were talking about this one in our last pod. It was a match that we kind of needed to win because of how close we are still to the relegation places and what it would mean for Salernitana if they got a point versus us getting a point, or all those other kind of types of calculations that were there. So I understand a little bit where you're coming from too, where maybe he didn't need to go full bore like that, but I kind of liked it because he put it out there. He put a lot of people on blast. I'm sure a lot of people were not very happy about it, but also, can you really argue against him?
No, not at all. Actually, mine was more of a, boosting a little bit of the factor of what he did. And you're right, he did do something that is not common out there. So that's kudos to him. But I think it brings him a little bit closer also to the fan base as well.
100%. Yeah.
Perhaps one of the most loved coaches so far. It's early to tell because it's still early, but these are things that make you 100% one of us type of thing. But I guess let's go back quickly to the Salernitana, then we'll go back to the Calciomercato. But
sure,
we heard it also from Olindo. They are 100% motivated, hungry. They need the points. They're they're at the bottom, really risking it all. So for them, in order to make sure to stay afloat and at least closer to that group and maybe aim for playouts, or if there is any, but hopefully I kind of enjoyed it last year, the playouts, but let's go, or staying at the fourth last, fifth last, sixth last, trying to reach those. They definitely needed to win. In fact, it showed it immediately. Mind you, on their side, they didn't have Inzaghi on the bench based on the fact that he was red carded from last match. So he had to look at it from the stands and maybe perhaps not cell phone, radio, or not radio, walkie-talkie, or whatever that might be. But they scored at the 90th second, more or less?
Yeah, they scored right at the beginning of the match, and it was right a little bit after a minute. What did you think about this one? Do you have any? I saw some initial comments about it being on Badel. What were your thoughts on the whole thing?
I think in general it was a little bad luck, but at the same time, not loss of focus, because at that point it's just the beginning. They were not highly focused enough, because after that incident, that was it. Nothing more. You didn't see almost anything more from Salernitana. They were always dangerous, mind you, but because of the quality that they, unfortunately for them, have this year, even though they have quoted but certain players that, like, look at even Candreva himself, it's like you always are afraid when he comes there. Even that howler that he had that didn't go too far off from our post at a certain point in the match, it kind of gave us a little bit, oh my God, what's happening, type of thing. But no, after that goal, everything came back into play. In fact, just right after 10, 11 minutes, you have Retegi's back.
Accelerates away from Martegeni. Badel controls it, plays it forward. Retegi! What a response from Genoa. 1-1 here at the Orecchi. Ochoa got a touch, but it wasn't enough to keep Retegi from scoring his fourth goal.
I mean, this was a fantastic goal. And I think, I know sometimes the fans have been on Badel, and we've talked about this a couple of times. I was going to say, by the way, in that lead-up goal, I put more of that first goal for Salernitana on the decision to pass it to Badel, where he had three players all the way around him, and you could see him kind of trying to control the ball and figure out what to do, but he had nowhere to go with it. And at that point, you're basically giving a free-for-all on our own side of the pitch because of where the ball was. Anyway, This was just a wonderful goal. There's a video that the club posted, I think, yesterday that shows a little bit more of the buildup and all the players that are touching it and the different interchanges and working the ball back and forth. And you see Goodmanson's involvement, you see Badel's involvement. I think it ultimately comes down in the final movement to
even Retegui himself. Like, he wasn't only the last baller.
And exactly, and there was almost kind of like a little bit of a triangle type movement between those three when the ball gets scored. And you have to give Badel a ton of credit for controlling the ball that came into him from Goodmanson, because that was just outrageous how he just stopped the ball and was able to play it into Retegui's path. Beautiful. And equally for Retegui, for him to hit with that type of power and accuracy, even if it's a close range shot, was just phenomenal and what we would kind of come to expect from him. So it was an awesome team goal and something that I think we were talking before about how Retegui's being due. I think you saw that in that goal.
Super powerful from the leg where we had the biggest fears, because that's where he had his injury that kept him out so long. That even only proved us that he is back. So that goal was his signature to say, hey, baby, I'm back. Also because he needs to be back if he wants to be part of our national team as well. Yeah, so that brought it to level, back to 1-1. Mind you, again, like Salernitana, even though they are where they are, even though everybody's talking about the fact of their quality and so on. By the way, instance of what happened with Retegui's goal.
Yeah, with the fans throwing things.
So I don't want to point too much the fingers to the fan base. Obviously, they're in a very difficult moment. So it's understandable, they have been almost for the entire championship so far anyways at the bottom. I mean, they were a little bit higher and then they kind of dropped down, and they have been at the very rock bottom for a while now. So I can understand the frustration seeing that, they not only they had the goal first and also the league that is almost like skipping away from their hands, like if they pulled up some sand and tried to hold it, but they can't. And I'm not justifying it, but I can understand where the frustration comes from. However, so what I'm trying to say is that after Retegui's goal, obviously he scored right under the curva of the Salernitana fans. And yes. He really did not even point the fans. He was just on that side of the pitch, and he was celebrating it alongside with all the players. And you start to see everything possible falling into the field, from snacks to chocolate bars to even pieces of the frickin' stadium, all right? So you even saw that from the referee.
That's the referee picked up, right? It looks like a piece of the ground or something. It's like, what the hell is it?
A piece from the standings, essentially. That's what it looks like, a piece of cement that kind of got chipped off or something. It was pretty big too. It's like, if you look at it, it's about 10 centimeters wide, maybe 5 inches, and maybe 3 inches or 5-6 centimeters thick. Thankfully, no one got injured at all. And that thing didn't hit anyone. There was a moment where it seemed like we didn't know what they were throwing, because we're throwing even like lighters and stuff like that. So imagine if you throw a lighter, even if it's like a big, I'm not trying to do advertising here, but it's like a piece of plastic with a whole bunch of gas inside it. I mean, if you throw it, it'll hurt a little bit. I mean,
it'll hurt. Yeah, it'll definitely hurt. Coming from that, especially coming from where that's coming from.
So at the end, it was only 40,000 fine the refereeing judge has given to Salernitana, saying that they're like yellow carded, in a sense that if something like that happens again, then they will have their field, closed doors essentially. So for now it's just that, and then Genoa got fined as well for $2,000 just because there was one.
It's for the sake of it, I guess.
Firecracker or something that got thrown onto the pitch whatsoever. It was, I guess, so something like that. But anyways, so that was a 1-1. A little bit. It was very actually cool. From a Salernitana perspective, obviously, the comments there were like, oh, who cares about what he did? But it was actually kind of nice. It was actually more nice on the fact of it looked like a piece of a movie where everything is coming into the pitch thrown by the fans. And he picks up this chocolate bar. He opens it. I'm talking about Strutman. He picks it up. He starts to chew it.
I did see that.
He's looking at the fans like saying, yeah, you're throwing stuff and I'm going to eat it. So F you. And he throws paper away and walks away. That was like so hilarious. And they have the Willy Wonka type of memes coming out now and so on. It's hilarious.
It's pretty amazing.
So that was 1-1. So then, as I mentioned before, the was quite, I would say, easy on Genoa, meaning the numbers, the statistics, and so on, the amount of shots on goal. But at the same time, second half, you have this very bizarre, it's fair because it's 100% fair, but very bizarre penalty.
Bardel now making a run in the box, spotted by Strootman. There's appeals for a handball, and a penalty's been awarded to Genoa. The elbow of Lovato. He was in the box.
Small incident again there happened. Well, I guess Retegi's super pumped that he's back and he's scored, and he's like, remember, these guys are all kids too, right? And he's ready to pick and kick at the penalty, and then Goodmanson comes and takes the ball away from him and say, no, I'm the one kicking. And a little bit of a fib, a little bit of a back and forth between the two of them. And it seemed like almost they were like upset at each other, at least in that specific moment. But all went well. We know that Goodmanson is the penalty taker of the team, so there are hierarchies in place, and so nothing really happened to that, where Goodmanson did put and kick the penalty and did score.
Goodmanson strikes, Goodmanson scores, straight through the middle, 2-1 Genoa.
And it was a perfect penalty. I think he placed it really well. It was obviously really important for us because it completed our comeback from being down earlier in the match. And this was a match, and I know you mentioned that it seemed like Salernitana didn't have a huge amount of chances, but I do think once again we had several big moments from Martinez. And you look at it on the whole, they didn't have as many chances, actual shots on goal as we did. We had 5 to their 2, but they had 11 shots on total. And I think there were a couple of big moments towards the end of the first half where Martinez came up big. You mentioned earlier about Candreva not really being able to place it, but having a shot that I think it maybe went right over the bar. I don't think it hit the bar. And Martinez kind of made himself big there too. So they had their moments as well, but this was a really important time for us to be clinical. And sometimes you don't like seeing that it would have been nice in a way for Retegi to come back and get a brace and be like back. But at the same time, if he misses that, then it completely changes the narrative of how his game went. And also, if you have a designated penalty taker, that should be how it goes. So it was a good moment for us, and it ended up being the winning goal for us, which was very, very important.
Salernitana doesn't have that depth, I suppose, to make it up against us, even though they did have the heart to put it all in. Second half was more of a containment, especially after the penalty that happened at the 58th minute, and it was ended there. The one interesting statistic there is 0 yellow cards, except a red card on one of the management on the Salernitana side on the bench, but 5 yellow cards on our side versus 0 on their side.
I never understand this. It doesn't make sense unless there's just complete, but it never works that way. There's always another person on the other side of the equation.
Right. So. At least one, right? But no. And the sad part is the 2 yellow cards from the first half were for 2 players that were already cautioned. And these are Badel and Frendrup, which both will have to skip the match at home against Lecce.
They're both big losses for us. For me, I feel like Badel probably was the player of the game in that match. And again, that might not always be the most popular take, but for me, he was involved in a lot of the play. You saw some of his importance in passing. There were some moments there. There were a couple of moments, especially early in the match, where he wasn't quite as sharp. But losing him and losing a workhorse in Frendrup, who's also been very critical to the way we play, it's going to be difficult. And it underlines even more Gila's frustration earlier in the week because, at least if you have a player like Kutlu in the side, he can step in perhaps if you need somebody to step in. He can substitute maybe in 70th minute if you need legs or something. We don't really have very many options. And these are 2 injuries in the same position pretty much for us.
Our own fans, expect to have Messi, and they all are complaining against Badel when he's been detrimental in a lot of matches. I do agree with you that he is the MVP for the match. No question about it. MVP of the match. Sure, he's old. Sure, he's slower. But we've also heard, and I still am very curious to see when he plays, but even Bohinen, the new talent kid from Norwegian from Salernitana that we purchased. So he's going to, by FYI, he's going to be out for at least 2 or 3 matches for an injury that he had. But nevertheless, he's slow too, very good and so on, but very slow too. So I guess they can't all be super fast. Even Malinowski's not super fast in a way in certain aspects.
Yeah, he's not.
I would put him perhaps together with Strootman, especially not only because, again, another one that is older too, right? But with that, the chocolate bar thing was just phenomenal.
It was pretty funny. That was one of my friends texted me that Strootman's always angry, and I think he plays with like some energy like that, but it was an appropriate response, I think, to that type of display from the fans. So I love to see it, to be honest with you.
Where does that take us? So that's match day 21. Now, mind you that there are a lot of matches that have not been played based on the fact of this new, and I want a small parenthesis around that, for the Supercoppa Italiana, where it was they changed the format. It was only a final. So the winner of the Serie A from last year versus the winner of Coppa Italia of last year. And now they changed it to the first two of the Serie A and the finalists of the Coppa Italia to play against each other in the semifinals and then go into the final. So it was Fiorentina, Napoli, Inter, and I can't remember who's the fourth one, but it just slipped. I don't know. Anyways. And then it went into the final, so it was Napoli against Inter winning this. This was all in Riyadh in the Saudi Arabia, where obviously this is very controversial. It has happened already a few other times where these matches are played abroad. Lots and loads of money that goes to the league. Does that help? Does that not help? I don't know. Definitely it's not a good thing for the fans. No question about that. And I'm sorry if I say this, but does that make us at a higher level, internationally speaking, in order to kind of try anyways to reach to the levels of EPL by doing this?
I mean, I always hate this stuff personally. I don't think it's a great thing. I don't know where the money goes. I don't know what that money is used for. Do the clubs get it? Like, what happens with all
They
this?
get some. They get some.
So cool, I guess. That's fine. But I think that it's not any sort of controversy that a lot of the governing bodies in sport and Italian football, it's no different. There's a lot of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of a thing that's going on. And I don't know, did anybody in Saudi Arabia care beyond the people that are organized for this event? Like, I just kind of feel like at some point you're getting away from the idea of what this sport is meant to be for, of who it's meant to be for. And yes, there's money, and yes, those money should benefit clubs, which then those fans should be seeing that reward. But I don't know that it does in a meaningful way. It just, for me, is kind of nakedly greedy decision.
Let me add to that. So just to give you more perspective of what's going on here. There were already complaints that they were saying didn't sell enough tickets because we were expecting Juventus and we were expecting Milan. So already right there is like, F you. Like,
fuck you. Yeah, 100%
exactly.
Fuck you.
I'm going to, there's nothing really to add more to the fact of F you. Like, seriously, if that's not what you like, don't do it next year.
Yeah, it's just not. But this is why there's so many complaints about the quote unquote modern game and all of these things, and not to conflate sometimes like playing styles with this type of a thing or something like that, or the new transfer processes. They're not always exactly the same as what we're talking about right now, but it's gross seeing this on display. I think I can't think of any football fan who actually cares about and follows football and sees a development like this and thinks that'll be good for the game. This is something that we can benefit from. Like, there are a couple of individuals who got a pretty big payday out of this, and that's about all that really this amounted to.
Last but not least, out of this one, there was another article from, I can't remember, not the from to, but who was involved in this article. I think it was, let me think here, Casini, which I'm not too sure. He's the president of the league, of the Serie A league. And he has voiced out that there are evaluating, I want to see your face now shaking. They are evaluating to play one entire match day abroad.
It's the same thing. You know, I get the globalization and the global game and growing the game and making an event. And in American sports, we are masters of this. We do this all the time. The NFL plays regular season games in Mexico. No one cares. Baseball plays games in London. I'm not sure anyone in London cares about that, but we do it. And obviously the European NFL games have become one of the new like model staple things. I actually looked at this. My team is the Kansas City Chiefs. It's where I grew up. I grew up in Kansas City. We played in Munich, Germany against the Miami Dolphins, which is kind of a ridiculous statement to say out loud. We played Miami in Munich. That was the home ground for that game. I looked up, or actually, sorry, it wasn't Munich, it was Frankfurt. I looked up travel to there because I actually have a friend who lives there. The ticket prices were like 4 times what I would have paid for if I would have gone to a game in Kansas City in the United States. And the stadium is fully packed and everything else. And in those aspects, you think about that type of fandom and that type of avidity, it makes a little bit more sense why those things happen, because at the very least, you have an opportunity to have some sort of relationship with fans in a way that they really don't. I don't really know what we're doing with bringing Serie A abroad unless really the main goal is to give fans in North America or other places a chance to have a touch point. But honestly, I think there's been enough demonstration of this with international summer friendlies and things that model works just as fine. Yes, if it's a more competitive match, if you have guarantee or a better shot at seeing first team players, it'll make more of a difference. It'll make more of an impact. And then you also have a way of having every club exposed and not just the ones that have the means or the fan bases to travel there. So like there's some arguments in some ways towards this type of a concept, but I think that there's a lot that needs to be done in Italy first before you start doing things like this. We are very fortunate. Marassi is an amazing place to watch a match. You see how many fans show up there. You see the dedication. You see how that changes the environment. You and I remember watching this team only a few years ago, and you wouldn't see that many people all the time. You see Gradinata Nord was all the way full, but you look at Distinti and Tribuna and these other places, and sometimes there weren't a whole lot of people in the stands. It depended on the game.
Which is more or less what's happening, no offense to them, but that's what you're seeing what's happening also with Sampdoria right now.
Right. And my point being with that, I'm not shitting on our own fans. I think we have the best fans in Serie A and in Italian football. What we had in the past is more commonplace in Italian football. You don't have grounds that are full. You don't have people who are attending matches. You have great seats right next to the pitch on the halfway line that go completely unused for 10 rows. Like, what has to be done is figuring out a way to build that passion back up in a way. You don't want to become what I think I've seen in some other cases, and I'm speaking about something that I don't know really at all here, but I can say in my only time in visiting France that I was very surprised to not see much more of a football culture there than I did. I was only in a few places in Bordeaux and in Paris and spent a day in Reims, and you could see some of those things. And we went to a match at Bordeaux, which was fun. But walking around in Paris, I couldn't find a damn game to put on, a bar to put on the Coupe de la Ligue, to their Coppa Italia. No one had it. They all had the FA Cup. That was being broadcast. I was in a touristy part of Paris, so that's probably why. But at the same point, like, we don't want to become this tertiary sport that no one really gives a shit about anymore. And I think you're much more at risk of losing that base in Italy than people think that they are. And you have to be focusing on that as your most important thing. You and I bitch all the time about not having merchandise available online in the same way it's available in stores in Savona and all these towns that are near Genova and all the things that are going on. I think that that's a good thing. At least we're energizing our fan bases around where we are. I would love to wear the same stuff that they've got, but I can wait. There aren't enough of me to justify not generating that interest right now.
We have to focus on the right things. Stadiums. The league itself needs a revamp. I'm going to even go further down to the fact of the ranks within the league has to probably all be changed because we just need fresher ideas, fresher mentality rather than this whole. Let me add something to that as well. So that is, it's becoming a little bit of an issue, and we've talked about it several times individually with respects to Genoa, but it's happening throughout the league. There's major issues going on, especially this year, or at least there's more focus, especially because of VAR and so on, with the refereeing. So there is a TV show in Italy. This channel is called Italia Uno. It's one of the private channels, the 3 cable channels from Berlusconi, or Mediaset. I'm just giving context. It's nothing.
Sure, no, it's helpful.
So there's this a program that I believe they do it weekly. It's like I'm sure there are, I don't know it well enough, but I'll describe it to you so you probably can quote it. But I'm sure there's something similar over here too, where they do this investigative work, which police or not police don't do, in order to uncover certain bad things that are happening. So this program is called Iene, and they've done several things. This show has been existing for quite a while, so I can probably quote 2 decades that this show is going on. So it's interesting because sometimes they talk about important stuff, important meaning interesting maybe to you, another time to someone else, and so on. And this one specifically, they had a referee. Obviously, you didn't know the name, you couldn't hear the voice proper because it was all camouflaged and so on. The image of the person was grayed out. It could have been someone else for all we know, right? But essentially, he did speak to the fact that even he was baffled. They're all baffled to say, why are certain things happening? Why, if a referee doesn't catch something, why doesn't VAR catch it? And they gave examples of the goal by Pulisic for Milan, some other penalty, I think it was given or not given to Bologna against Juve, a penalty that was given to Juve that shouldn't have, a penalty that was not given to Juve. So he wasn't pointing specifically to one team versus another, at least from what I've seen. But it was quite interesting that this came out nationally and finally, for the first time, I would say, even internally. Why are certain referees being penalized? Because the penalization for a referee is not a red card. It's to put them on the side for 1, 2, 5 matches, and they get penalized from the income, right? So why are certain ones that make the mistake are not held off, while others that aren't? You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say with this is, long story short, is essentially that it's good that something is starting to happen. There might be a class action coming up, he said. I talked about 3 or 4 referees that are starting to do something. And I'm excited if this is happening, because I've been saying, especially we're being back now in Serie A, it has been shown that it's fishy. It's smelly. The refereeing organization in Italy stinks.
It's unfortunate reality, and your point, I think, is just, it's right. It's like we have so many problems with the game domestically that adding some other thing that also feels like, why are we doing this? It just adds to more distrust, and it tells more people that this game is maybe not for them. I think that's part of the problem with this, is like, we need to be, there are some things about Italian football that are good. You don't have, as what's talked about a lot of times, is how the English game and atmosphere has become sanitized. There's actually more and more videos out there. There's I don't know if you are, I watch these 2 channels on YouTube all the time. There's one called HITC Sevens, and there's another one called Stunt Peg, which is like this young woman who goes to like football games all the time. But they're talking about how non-league football is becoming more and more popular because of this ridiculous thing that's happening, where there's so much money going into Premier League football that these academies are getting so large that 90% of the kids that go through these academies never become anything professional at all. They don't even go into the 3rd or 4th tier, but that's all they've known is football. So then they play non-league, which is used to be non-professional. And now these non-league teams have budgets that are their budgets. And then you have fans who are going there and they're watching the games because there's more of a fan culture. You can have a pint next to the ground and you can be part of the club. You can talk to the chairman and go to the pub after the match with the players and everything and have a totally different experience. And you have a lot of people who are saying that, you know, they're feeling more and more disenfranchised from the Prem because it's a production at this point. You have all of this money, you have all these players. It seems like it's really only a competition for a handful of clubs. And even then, like, you've got more and more rules about what fans can and cannot do in the ground. You have more and more price increases. You've got a lot of teams. I follow Arsenal in England. They're famous for being a tourist club. I'm not from England. Most people who attend the matches are not from England usually. And it I think completely ruins what these teams are meant to be about. At least Italy doesn't have as much of that problem. But there are a lot of other problems that are going on with Italian football that need to be addressed before you start saying something like, I think we should play an entire match day in a different continent or a different country or something.
Theories are coming out right now. It's just apparent talk only, evaluation. So my point to those comments are, Italians are known to suck it up, excuse my language, but suck it up when it comes to extremely taxed country, extremely low wages and so on, but don't touch their football. Don't touch their culture, because it will become a revolution from a fan base.
It'll be a big thing. And you'll see all of a sudden we'll have a bunch of pro Vercelli fans out of nowhere, and you'll be like, what the fuck's going on? But like, you're going to have that type of thing could totally happen in Italian football. I mean, I think more than likely you'll have riots in the streets than people moving clubs. But
even look at Rob and Peter from our few pods ago from the Talking Total podcast, and they were saying a lot of people not necessarily pointing to the fact of being bored about EPL, but they're more like saying, we like this fact of going to the stadium, seeing the stadium with all of these fans. And by the way, let me add to that, there was another TV show. It was part of the news. So it's like a section within same channel, by the way. So strangely enough, so they had this service. I don't know what do they call it, like a special within this fragment of a TV show of sports, and they talked about Genoa. So they're saying Genoa coming back from Serie B only for 1 year, back in Serie A, and they come to win in the first leg the champions. They are the champions. So no, we're not talking about Inter. We're talking about Genoa. Yes, why? Because they are the champions, not only of folklore, not only of spectacle, and they showed a few matches like the opener against Fiorentina, even though we did lose 4-1, or the match against Milan for the 130th, or the match against Torino, which was remembering the passing of a famous Genoese and Genoano singer. It is so beautiful. And the championship the winter championship they have won is the capacity attendance to the stadiums, overpassing all the big ones with a 98% capacity rate, which was only second to Cagliari and Atalanta. But why were they up there was because their stadiums were cut in half because of renovations. Right. And I guess the best close one would have been, I'm trying to going by memory here.
Juve?
I think it was Juve, because
also smaller ground when they redid it. By the way, we have at least 30,000 guaranteed for Lecce. I
heard we're continuously being over the 30 mark, which is fantastic. Mind you, everyone for who doesn't know, the capacity of the stadium, even though it is limited, in my opinion, it was bigger, but we're talking about different type of regulations of safety and so on, without chairs. So you had to sit on the cement and so on. I remember in the day when the capacity was reaching around 40,000. But right now, I think it's 33,200, something like that. Mm-hmm. So if we're passing the 30, that's excellent. It's just like, mind you, we have 27,777 season tickets. So everything on top of that is always coming out from the purchasing of the tickets. But it's always exciting. But what I wanted to talk about was going back to what we were talking about before. So the transfer market. What's going on with the transfer market?
Tell me, Fabry. Give me the latest.
We have, what's easy to talk about, just let me get them out of the way, is we have a whole bunch of a lineup of players that left. So what that means is we need to replace. At least we were already, before their departure, we were still tight, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. We always complained throughout the match.
Striker, backups.
Right? So we didn't have the depth. And if you remember, I talked about some fans that I'm talking to also on social media, and they are saying, great team, great results so far, and so on. And we'll talk about the standings in a second too. But the fact that we need a little bit more depth in order to give assurance also to Gilardino, not only changing a module, but in the event there are some injuries that can happen. Now, let's keep in mind that it's not Preziosi anymore. And what I'm saying, Preziosi being our former owner back up until 2-3 years ago, is Preziosi was very known, besides the fact of I'm buying this, selling this, this year, left, right, and center. It was known to buy patches. And what I mean by patches is players that are there to fit for the cause of the losing up until now and trying to survive for the next year. And that's not what this club is doing. Our new owners are not doing that. And I love that. So you're going to hear a lot of rumors and people talking and badly about the club, about the owners and so on. But the truth is, you need a plan. And the plan is to invest. We know we're going to have to sell some hot players here and there, but as long as they invest, and that's what the words, okay, they may have talked too fast saying we're not selling here and so on, but they also never hit on the fact of we are going to sell if the right price is there. And for Draguzin, I beg anyone to differ to say if that was not a good price for 25 plus 6 and bonuses, almost a given that they're going to happen.
It was a difficult loss. I think we were all beside ourselves that we were going to let this happen during the season. I think like the only things you can really complain about Dragusin is maybe, yes, it could have been 10 million more in the summertime. It was less ideal to lose him in January. But to your point, we needed funds. This continued to make us revenue positive in our transfer dealings over the last few seasons. And we get a player out of it, at least on loan, to help cover a gap in a short period of time with no cost. Exactly. If this guy doesn't work out at all, we don't have to buy him. We are paying none of his wages for the rest of the season. So I think when you look at where we are as a club, it's really difficult for us to say no. Maybe it would have been a little bit better for us if we took Bayern's offer, which was rumored to be a little bit more valuable, but
that was honorable to him because he did say that he gave his word over to Tottenham. He did say also that he was aiming for Premier League. And after the fact, also his agent said, we will get to Bayern level, like Real Bayern, but he still has to do that in-between step, which makes sense. But anyway, Draguzin out to Tottenham, Hefty out to Montpellier in Ligue 1. Then you have Jagiello. Rumors, again, these journalists that are talking shit, excuse my language, but he goes to Spezia, so he doesn't go to Hertha Berlin. Kutlu sent back to the sender because did not have any impact whatsoever, and I'm sure there wasn't good waters, the good friendship there with Gilardino, in my opinion. And lastly, Puskas to Bari. Now, who came in was Pence, as you mentioned, from the Dragusin deal from Tottenham, and Bohinen, which we briefly mentioned him before, from Salernitana. Quick topic with respects to who is out there on the radar. Small thing I wanted to say, these journalists just love talking about names. Like, they're going to shoot 10 names. Eventually, maybe one is going to be right. And then that journalist is a god on earth saying that he knows everything. The truth is, they might know certain things, but they also color a lot of other things. So what I'm trying to say with that is you've heard names from Juric from Verona, Pellegrini from Torino, Niang now that he's a free agent as he closed his deal with Demispor, Shomurodov from Cagliari, Ostegard from Ornat or with Zanoli that now we saw him in Salernitana. By the way, what did you think about Zanoli in Salernitana? Very little, few minutes, but personally, I mean, we might hear more about him, but at first, before he started playing, like, oh my god, he's going to score because
of our luck.
That's Murphy's law, right? But at the end, he wasn't incisive at all. Perhaps the poor kid hasn't been even playing that much, for that matter. So I can only wish well for him.
I personally have not been as much on that transfer. I don't know as much about Zanoli as a player, but I'm with you. It seems more of like an unknown. Like, that's why I'm kind of questioning it, because I don't know. I like, we're at a time in where we are as a club, we're going to need to move players on for profit. I think it's just kind of a reality of where we are. It seems like a speculation that we're going to get something from a player like that. And I don't think we're quite at the luxury to have a bunch of like speculative players that might or might not work out. We need players who can really get us results. So we'll see. I'm with you. I wish him the best of luck too, but it seemed more like a risk to me.
Yeah, for sure. And lastly was Musa, which the rumors again had that Ottolini, our sports director, was in Benfica in order to deal with him. Is it going to happen or not? Again, something else. People think that you go to a city, you talk to the club or the agent, and it's a done deal. It's not only a 1 conversation, 1 minute conversation. It's more than that. There's a whole entourage, a whole group, a back and forth. You need the player, you need the agent, you need the club, you need a whole bunch of things really to talk through, making sure that, sometimes there are some counter offers, or, it's almost like a bid in a way. And the closer you get to the end, you still get those clubs that are hungry in a way for players so they can play. Some clubs can play on that to raise the prices, right? Or you can also wait towards the end and get clubs that are desperate to get rid of some players, and maybe they can give them to you for free, or what? Not free, no, but like straight loans or stuff like that. But some good news. Finish off on a couple players that still some good ones rumors that were that we've heard about. Ankeye or whatever the name is from Sheriff Tiraspol is another one, a defender that seems to be on the radar, but apparently there are some difficulties in the event this is true, because there is no extra space for non-European passports. So unless we get rid of Galdames, which is probably the closest one that is out the door, then maybe that can happen. What else I have for you is Bani. Bani was exactly. So his contract was due this June, and he's turning 30 this year. But he has shown again that he's solid at the back, and with him at the back, we don't have much issues.
It's an important signing, I think. Obviously, he's a little bit older in his career. It's different, maybe his prospects long term for us in some sort of capacity, but he's been so important for us these past few seasons. And you're exactly right. Even in some of the matches that he was out and we had Dragoshin and others in, you could see he has a type of leadership and a type of stability in the back. Maybe he doesn't always score goals or show up as much on the radar per se, but he's a really important defender to our team. And I think it's great news that we signed him up. I think we need some consistency going up to the next several seasons, and having him on, it's a good win for us.
Mind you, during the season, we did not have almost any instance of not having Dragoshin, so we almost had him always. But in the last two matches, it proves that I'm not saying that we're not missing him, because obviously we are missing such a talented player like Dragoshin. But at the same time, we're also showing that we are still solid in defense, so far anyways, and we're still doing well. But if you remember, we did very poorly those 2, 3, 4 matches without Bani.
Exactly. In some ways it shows a little bit that type of thing. And obviously you never want to lose a player of Dragoshin's quality. I don't think we're saying that, good riddance, Dragoshin, or anything close to that. But you look at his importance, and sometimes having better communicators is more important than other things. And I think he's an important team leader. There's no question about that.
2-year contract. So ending his contract was supposed to be in June 2024. He has extended his contract to June 2026. And Genoa has turned down an offer from, nonetheless, no, I don't know why I said nonetheless, but from Orlando City Soccer from the MLS, which was going to offer $3 million to Genoa, and for Bani, and they turned it down.
Good for them.
No news from the infirmary. What we know is Sabelli, Bohinen, Messias, and Haps and Martin are out. Apparently, Sabelli might make it, but not necessary from the starting 11, just to be there in the event of needing him. Bohinen, I mentioned that before, 2 or 3 games. Messias and Haps for at least another month, and Martin almost, I think, about the same. So these are not good news at all.
Not good news.
De Winter is going to come back on because he's back from the ban, but we do have Badel and Frendrup out. So we're still in emergency essentially. And no, even from the sports director said that this week, no name would have come. Maybe in the next one, which is when is the 31st? Wednesday. So we only have Monday to Wednesday of next week left for the transfer market, and hopefully something else can come. Briefly, we have a whole bunch of news here today, but
we do though.
Today was also not too important, maybe too sad, too bad. I wanted to do something about it, but anyways, today was the inauguration of this movie that has been created for the Genoani. So the name of the movie, I'm trying to remember it here off the top of my head, but I can't remember, so I have to go and read it. So it's a documentary movie called Genoa comunque e ovunque, which means Genoa no matter what and anywhere. It talks about the fans. It talks about, there's even Milito in it and Bresh and so on. So it's made specifically for the fans. It's only for only a few days in the cinemas, specifically obviously Genoa City, the Genova, but also there were a lot of cities that mostly because I'm guessing because of the Genoa club spread around Italy. So there are some in Milan, some in Novara, some in the small towns around the coast of Liguria as well, and even all around. I'm just thinking about the ones that I came to mind, but there's a whole bunch. I wish we were able to organize something, at least from our perspective, even if it was a streaming factor.
No.
But
soon enough, I feel like that'll happen before too long.
Yeah. I'm sure that this, even though we might not get it live with everybody else, eventually they'll put in streaming somehow, and then we can able to enjoy it ourselves as well.
Yes.
And then what to say? Oh, there was a small interview. Not sure how important it is. If you remember, a player from AC Milan called Billy Costa Curta. So he was interviewed, and just reading here off the title, he says Gilardino it runs off his back any type of criticism, and I think that's hilarious, and I think that's so right. This guy, yeah. I and going back to the match of Salernitana, I think besides the fact that it's 3 matches out of 3 that Gilardino beats Pippo Inzaghi, but that's a different story. And our friend, if you remember, Dan from Regina, that the poor club, what happened to them went all the way down, right? So, but he commented on a post that I had put saying, "I'm gonna bet on Pippo to win this time around." And so but it didn't happen. But so it was interesting. He says here, as a coach. As he was when he was a player, any type of criticisms just runs off his back. So anyways, interesting when he talked about that. And then what else can we say? Let's quickly talk about the next match. So first of all, we have the regrets from our friends Will, Dom, and Zach. I quickly spoken to them from the UK club Lecce Club UK, sorry. Mm-hmm. And so they send their regards. But at the same time, before we get into the match or predictions, let's look quickly what the standings looks like.
Yeah, I mean, this was a really important one for us, especially where we are in the table now after now playing through 21 matches. And to your point at the beginning of the pod, because of some of the cup craziness going on, not every team has played the same amount of matches as we have, including Torino, who sit directly above us. But looking from the top all the way down, Juve, having not been involved in the cup competition, have an extra match week on Inter at the moment. They're top of the table right now, I think maybe for the first time this season, with 52 points. You have Inter sitting in second place with 51, but a game in hand, so you kind of expect them to reclaim that top spot. AC Milan on third place with 45 points, also with that 21 matches played, so you might see, well, actually you probably won't see too much difference there because there's quite a big gap between the top 3 teams in Serie A versus everybody else. But you get down into Fiorentina, they're sitting in 4th spot. They play against Inter this weekend. You have Atalanta at 5th on 33, Lazio at 6th, sitting on 33 with just behind Atalanta on goal differential. Bologna still going strong, but having faltered a little bit in the last 3 matches. So they're now 7th spot on 32, still within striking distance of Europe, but not sitting right in that 4th spot as they were only a couple match weeks ago. Roma on 32 points as well, behind, I think maybe in terms of head-to-head, they're under where Bologna are. And then you have Napoli at 9th with 31, Torino at 10th with 28. The important thing with those 2 teams is that they again have the game in hand. But with this momentary kind of advantage for Genoa right now, we're sitting at 11th with 25 points. We're only 3 points back behind Torino, but we would need a Torino loss against Cagliari for that to really hold pat and for us to only be a win away from 10th place. And of course, other losses.
Before you go on to the second half, so first of all, we're the champions of the right side of the standings.
That's right.
But
the top of the rest.
To your point, similarly to the top 3 of the league compared to the remainder, it seems like there's some groups happening. So definitely there's a sort of a battle for the 4th spot. And obviously all those teams that sort of kind of, I would put them all the way from Napoli, I guess also Torino, but they are starting to fall a little bit behind, even though you did say that they still have a game at hand. But I would put these teams from Fiorentina, Atalanta, Lazio, Bologna, Roma, Napoli, maybe also Torino, are the ones to be battling for those 3 spots, maybe 4 for the European spots, like from the 4th of the Champions League to one, maybe two of Europa League, and definitely the Conference League. And then you start to have this kind of division, like a wall or a gap or something, again, from us with the groups above. Because right now, we are only 3 points to Toro, but if Toro win, that means that they're going to go up to Napoli's, even though Napoli is a game at hand. But that starts to be a little bit, not tough. It's not impossible. I'm not saying that that's where we are aiming, but at the same time, that's 6 points that would bring us only to the 10th spot. Imagine that.
I mean, it would be fantastic to finish the season in a place like that. Who knows? But you're right. I see what you mean about kind of where those teams stack up. And you never know with Toro. I mean, they've got a great keeper. They've got a decent defense. Like, they could do something. They could I think they'll stay competitive in where they are. But you definitely, I'm with you that I would put more money on Napoli or Roma finishing above where they are. But then as you can kind of continue on down throughout the table, there's only one other team that I think participated in the cup craziness, who we'll get to a bit later, is Sassuolo, who really, for their recent season's performance, have not looked like the same Sassuolo. But also, what am I really saying about Sassuolo? Monza on 12th with 25 points. One down is Frosinone on 13th with 22, breaking a recent winless streak by winning against Verona. Our opponents this match week, Lecce on 21 points. They've really been in a bad run of form, actually. 4 losses and a draw in their last 5. Sassuolo are the team in 15th spot on 19. You think probably they'll hop up into 14th place with that game in hand that they have. They play against Monza this weekend. So not exactly straightforward for them, but you never know. Udinese 16th on 18 points. You then kind of get into these kind of teams from Udinese onwards, and maybe you put Sassuolo in this category if they don't get a result this weekend. These are the teams probably most close to being danger of moving down. Although honestly, I still think there's enough closeness here where it's a bigger group than this list. Udinese on 16, Cagliari 17th position with 18 points, Verona that first relegation spot on 17 points. Empoli sitting in the 19th place in the table with only 16 points. And then last you have Salernitana, 12 points through 21 matches and on the 20th spot. So, it's still something where, like, where we are on the table, we were talking a week or two ago about us being closer to 18th position than being in the top 10, I think, even what we were saying at the time. I don't know if that was actually true. We still have an 8-point cushion between us and Verona, which isn't bad, but you never know with how this season can go. There's a lot of bunching up, especially when you get from Frosinone on downwards, where you've got between 22 points and basically 13th position and 18th position are all separated by a 5-point gap. And one of those teams has a game in hand. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens with this side of the table in the remainder of the season. And this match against Lecce is another one where, it's an important one for us to get a result. This is another team in a similar place to where we are. They obviously started the season really, really strong, and we didn't fare so well. The first time we played, we actually lost the match. So figuring out a way to have the right kind of point return in this one is going to be important for us.
Genoa right now has 25 points after match day 21. When was last time we've seen Genoa at that level? Was since 2015. I mean, that kind of underlines the fact of how we sucked so far. But at the same time, I'm trying to say, like, that was a very good year. A decent year anyways. Mm-hmm. And so the fact of being at 25 points, we should see that in a positive perspective. That means only 15 points to the target goal of this season, which is not bad.
No, it's a great achievement so far. We've been talking for a long time, but basically we need about a point a match, and we're at a point now with this win where we've surpassed that. This is the first time where we're looking at it and saying we've played 21 match days, we have 25 points. And so it's definitely a good sign. I'm always wary of, like, completely stopping and feeling like we can pat each other on the back and feel really safe and comfortable. I think there's maybe some rational comments about how that looks like it's going to be the case, but I'm not ready to hear those yet because there's a whole season to go. There's a whole lot of games to play. You never know what's going to happen. We are short on players. There's a lot of things that I think still could happen in this league, of course, and I know you know that as much as anybody does. But you have to look at it like there's no other way really, I think, to summarize the first half of the season than job well done. This is what we set to do in this season. We wanted stability. We wanted to re-announce ourselves to Serie A. We've had a couple of marquee victories. We've gotten people's attention. We're doing a good job of trying to make sure we solidify our position. By the way, if we're able to do all this while selling a player and getting a decent return, it's a pretty fucking good season for us in returning back to Serie A. So,
and one more thing to add to that, 777 Partners, our current owners, make sure that you're signing doing some sort of contract to that poor Gilardino, which is still running off of the fumes of the Primavera contract.
Yeah, no kidding. That's one of our biggest things. There's almost like this is something that needs more urgency even than...
Gilardino did say in a few times, because they have some journalists obviously did point that out in a lot of press conferences. And he said, I don't care right now. I'm 100% focused on the season. We'll get to that. It'll be both have to have these conversations. And I'm sure that we'll both come to an agreement. So I guess.
Okay. I'll worry a little bit less then.
Or for now, anyways. All right. Well, let's jump into the predictions.
Yes, so it's going to be an interesting match, as we talked about, because we're going to be missing a couple of players. Thankfully, Lecce are as well. There are a few players that they actually have, I think, for the Africa Cup of Nations that will not be there. We're missing Badel and Frendrup, as we discussed before. Didn't get quite the result we had at the beginning of the season when we played them. It's good for us that we are playing at home at the Ferraris. I think that's always something that plays in our favor. And Lecce have not been in quite the same run of form. They've kind of been Jekyll and Hyde in terms of home and away. They've not actually scored a goal in their last 3 away matches. They've not scored period in their last 2 matches. I think we've got a good opportunity to try to get another 3 points here. I do think that we'll be able to find a way. I worry still about Lecce and how they're able to pose a threat to us. Of course, remember this game last go around. I think the big thing that really turned it for us was that red card. That was kind of the thing that changed the dynamic of the match. They ended up scoring what had been kind of a famous calling card of like a late goal in the season, and I would say it was like relatively even before then, but it would be wrong to say that Lecce didn't have chances, because they did. I think that this is one where we're going to figure out a solution. I do worry about Frendrup and Badel. I think that's going to be something that how we're finding a player to step in there and guys to kind of come in. I don't even know exactly what our full match day squad is going to look like, given that we've had so many guys in the midfield who maybe haven't represented us as much. I think you're more likely to see Torsby in the starting lineup. I would expect also Strootman to be there, and then whoever we have in that third position, maybe it is Strootman, Torsby, and Malinovsky as our 3 kind of more traditional midfielders, and then deploying Sabelli and Spence as our players on the margins. So we'll see what ends up happening. I believe it will be 1-0 to Genoa. I think that's how we're going to finish with the match. I like Retegui again, personally. I think that we had an important goal. We've been waiting for him to score again. We talked a little bit about some of the interplay and passing. I think Badel is going to be a missing player. I believe that. I think people will maybe feel that more than they're expecting to. But I do think that you've got some mercurial nature with Malinovsky and how he can interplay. We're still going to have Goodmanson on the pitch as well. I think there's going to be enough ways of us figuring out how to get the ball into Retegui's path. And one thing that I'll say, we didn't talk very much about Jed Spence in the match before, and to be fair, there wasn't a whole lot of things to say, but he was in a lot of places in that match, and I think that's going to benefit us against Lecce, assuming that he does play, because you saw him kind of breaking up play and intercepting and making the right reads. You saw him also bombing forward, and he's right behind Retegui. He was the first person to celebrate with Retegui when he scored his goal. I think there maybe is going to be a little bit of spark that we see from him in this match too, but I'm not putting too much past Lecce either, even in their not so great run of form. And I think it'll be a 1-0 win for us, but we have to be ready and we have to make sure we make the right adjustments with, again, a depleted squad to a degree.
Okay, that's all, folks. No, meaning there's nothing I can really add to that, what you said. Everything is perfect. No, just a few things that I might just add to everything you said perfectly was essentially we will have De Winter back. So that
yes,
means
that's a big. I think that's good.
That definitely helps also because Vogliacco, even though he did play very well, he had to be subbed because of cramps. No injury, just cramps, apparently.
It was cramp. Okay.
Yeah. We still have Strootman, so not to forget also him. Obviously, he doesn't have the 90 minutes in him, or actually 100, because nowadays we're playing always more. But to your point, Spence did an amazing job for what he was, meaning for what he had done so far, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he had done only 2 to 3 training sessions under Gilardino. In fact, you saw that wherever Gilardino put him was perfectly to the sense of what he could do. So offer is the tactical type of ability that he has, and focus more on, even though we have been told that he suffers more on the defense, he did play a lot more on the defense side, and you could see that every time he went a little bit further up, he always looked back to make sure that we were covered and so on. So I think that so far, for what he had done, he showed us great potential. Obviously, I'm going to keep fingers crossed that he's not like Martin or other players that we've seen in the past, where great first performance and then gets lost in the shuffle again.
Yeah.
If he can bring, I saw him on the left and on the right, so the fact of him playing on both sides shows great potential. On top of that, Malinowski is definitely, Gilardino has reinvented a position for him that is very perfect for him. We at the front, we have no issues. We saw Reteghi's back. Goodmanson has always been this winger that is scoring like a striker, and we will have added on top of that, because of De Winter. I can probably foresee, if Sabelli is not back, we can still see Vasquez moving up on the 5-line midfield. So, and the great, amazing goalie that we have. So, having said this, I'm not too fearful about the emergency in the midfield. Obviously, we're going to have a great hole to cover, big shoes to fill for Badel. People can still complain that he's slow, but oh God, when he gives that right ball, he is perfect and amazing, which Strootman has different qualities compared to him. So you can't ask Strootman to be a Badel, and that's fine. But at the same time, I do agree with you. If you look at Lecce's statistics, it's poor, which does not mean that we're not going to have that opportunity. Oh, by the way, our friends from the Lecce Club UK said, we've been rooting for you guys so far, but on the next match, no.
Fair enough.
So I foresee that they maybe would have claimed a victory on their side. But on our side, I think that we have the opportunity to stretch our positivity when it comes to results. Lecce is in a bad spell. The last 5, they only tied 1 and lost all the other 4. And to your point, scoring very little and so on. And for us, the form is not the best of the league so far, but it's quite positive when you look at the fact of having 9 points in 5 matches. So 3 ties and 2 wins. Yeah. And we're up on an up and up because we have the 12th man. So we didn't have it against Lecce on the first leg. At the first leg, because we were playing down at Via del Mare, but now playing at the Ferraris, oh boy, everybody's saying that is an inferno for them, not for us, mind you. So I think it's going to be a 2-0. That's what I'm hoping for, or maybe a 1-0. But I would like to see nothing against Lecce, because I think they're just in a bad moment. They were in the Champions League spots at the beginning of the season, and now they've dropped all the way down to the 14th, just shy. Well, still sitting 3 points above Sassuolo, and Sassuolo still with 1 game at hand. But yeah, 2-0, and will bring us to 28 points. That's going to be starting to be when we can start to have fun rather than to gain those points that we're needed. All right, so having said that, I think we are at a wrap. So follow us always on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Drop us all the comments you want. Interact with us. Send us messages. And we just a refresher from another time, we have this English chat going on among Genoani. So if you want to join, just send us a message and we'll be more than pleased to have you with us. And never forget, always and forever, Forza Genoa.
Forza Genoa. You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.